Again, someone's going to say, boy, Dan's being extremely repetitive again. I hope that when I go through this, I say this over and over, you won't be able to get it out of your head or your heart. Because if you do not embrace the truth of what is happening here, you will never escape what's coming. There is calamity and bad stuff going to happen to those who remain on that legal citizenship that's about to sink. And there's only a number of life rafts, mainly because the fact is that the majority of the ship will go down with its passengers. Only a few will survive and take that saving life raft, which is Jesus Christ. And he gave the answer in God's word, which is a promise, and God doesn't renege on his promises. So he's given all the answers in the Bible for all those who have righteous heart to see. Now, when we look at active state, remember, broad and spacious is the road leading off into destruction, and many are the ones finding it. Narrow is the road leading to life, and few are the ones finding it. So let's look again at active state. In the broad sense, this is Canadian Law Dictionary. I'm just using this as reference because they seem to spell this out properly. In the broad sense, so this is the broad way of the term, many lawful acts of the executive government and many instances of the exercise of the prerogative of the crown might be designated acts of state. Now, remember, this is an act of state document. This is a statute document. Okay? It's not an act of God document, it's an act of state document. And remember, we already basically had already explained in the previous video that the equity will not allow a statute to be used as a cloak or a covering of fraud. So to escape is to leave one's cloak behind. Okay, the covering. So we go further into this definition. It says, there is a narrower sense. Okay, now we're into the narrow road. And that in which the term is more technically, now you're dealing with tech, which was spoken of. The serpent was the most subtle, and it means tech and web, if not exclusively employed, there's ploy, deceive, which related to acts done, that's acts of state, adopted by the ruling powers of independent states, those are legal states, in their political and sovereign capacity, legal capacity, particularly an act injurious to the person or to the property of some person who is not at that time, we'll put time of birth, of that act, a subject of Her Majesty. So they just declared that if they trespassed on something that wasn't theirs, or someone who wasn't a subject of Her Majesty, then they would have made a tort or a damage on that. So an act of state can't hide. They can't hide from equity. You have equitable relief because of this first document that brought the inducement to eat of the forbidden fruit. This document looked like it was telling you could touch it, but it was actually forbidding you to touch it because it was drawing the line on it, and they wanted to see whether or not you would know. And you didn't know, as Eve did, which tree was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You didn't realize that there was the truth of life, which was out of your God-given name. You didn't realize that you were eating a forbidden truth that was going to contain both good and evil. And that's what the certificate relates to, good and evil mixed together, even though they don't mix. So we have a very simple explanation there, okay? Explaining act of state. I hope we take the time on that one. Now we're going to go to act of God, because an act of God happened in here, mixed in there. But until you do this, nothing will happen. Act of God amounts to an interference in the course of nature, so unexpected that any consequence arising from it will be regarded as too remote to be foundation for successful legal action. So when you do the act of God requirement to become a disciple of Christ, to come out from among them, you will still be involved in legal prosecution until that. But you must remove what was given you. Take up your stake, what you have involved. But until you give to Caesar what is Caesar and God's what is God's, this will not occur for you. When you're supporting the Caesar world, you are claiming entitlement to receive something back from it, and you're creating the debt and you're holding the debt as a surety for it. You must remove something that is there from that. And there's only one way to do that. Now, act of God clause generally operates to discharge a contracting party when a supervening, sometimes supernatural event beyond the control of either party makes performance impossible. You cannot serve God and mammon. It is an impossibility for you to go down both paths. Under election, we're going to do that again in the next video, which is going to basically bring clarity to the word election, because unfortunately in the legal, you elected to go down both paths at the same time, and you cannot exercise the right of one path at the same time of exercising the right of the other path.